I got a secret I want to share with you. No pizzeria that has leftover pizza dough throws it away. I'm going to show you a simple way today of how you can refresh any leftover pizza dough into a brand new pizza dough again, and it's going to be super easy and simple. A lot of times you'll get dough and sometimes you'll leave it in the refrigerator for longer and it'll get overproof, and I've taken this one to the complete extreme. So if you can look at this dough, see how it's just breaking apart already on the insides here. It's definitely not something that you would use to make pizza right now. But the good news is we can use this dough as our pre-ferment and speed up the process of making new pizza. Now today I'm going to be using our Prep a Pizza dough kit to do this with, but to be honest with you, any dough recipe, this is something that you can do with any dough recipe to refresh a dough. The biggest thing, and I've tested this multiple different ways, in fact, that's how I even got this one to the almost extreme, is that there are a couple of very small, simple rules to this, is that you never want to put more refreshed dough, old dough, in with your new mix. So for example, let's just do simple math here. If you're going to put 1,000 grams of flour, your refreshed dough should be no more than 50% of that. And in fact, realistically, probably the best place to be is 25%. And to think about it in the terms of maybe a dough ball or something like that. So for example, if you know that your recipe makes 6 dough balls, like this one does, I only want to put at the maximum 3, but realistically 1 to 2 would be fun. Today, I'm just going to do 1 and show you how. And it's very simple to do. Everything's going to be the same for our steps, with the exception of we are going to skip several different steps. Because this dough is already fermented and already has the smell, the flavor, and everything already there, this is now our poolish. So everything else that gets incorporated is basically going to be fermented by this. Let's walk through those steps. Into the mixer, I'm going to scrape out what is about 1 of these dough balls, and this is going to go into the mixer. Now, the rest of this, you can put it into a plastic bag and you can freeze it and use it later, doing the same process. So you never have to actually throw any of this away. You can just simply use this for your next refresh. So that's already there. Also, another word of advice, if you don't have some kind of a stand mixer or spiral mixer or any of that stuff at home, you could do this by hand. It does take a little bit of longer time, but it's not something that can't be done. You don't need this equipment to accomplish this. Realistically, you can break up that dough into smaller pieces with the water and make yourself kind of a poolish by hand and do all of that. And we're going to talk about that through the mixer based on how our kit is staged. I want to show you based on our kit, but realistically, you could also just incorporate all of the ingredients that are in here with the water and everything like that through the steps, and we'll talk about that. The first step is, obviously we have a Prep a Pizza dough kit, we got to open the bag. The good news is we don't need the honey for this, so we're going to toss that away because right now we already have a pre-ferment. We don't need to add any extra. Also, semolina, don't need that for the recipe because that's something that is for stretching out your dough later on. Throw that out of the way. Now, you will need a measuring cup for water. If you don't have a temperature gun, we're going to talk about that part. If you do, I'm going to show you today how to mix to 23 degrees Celsius. It's super simple to do and more of a common sense thing, but let's put it in video anyways. That way you can understand what it is. Also, you're going to need your yeast packet, your olive oil packet, the bag labeled P for poolish, as well as the remaining flour bag, which is not labeled at all. What we're going to do is we're going to mix all of this together inside of here. But what I'm going to show you is kind of a staged format of that so you can understand the steps by hand as well. Obviously, we're using the mixer today, but once again, like I said, you could do this by hand. The first step is we need to get a cup of water. I want cold water. I don't want hot water, especially when mixing. Whether you're mixing by hand or you're mixing in a mixer, it causes friction. Friction creates heat. When you heat up your dough, it makes it harder to work with. So you want to create as much incorporation before the dough heats up to the appropriate temperature that you would overmix the dough. We got our cup of water here. We're going to use our yeast packet. What this is going to do is it's going to help strengthen this dough, where the yeast that's inside of this poolish, you could do it natural by utilizing this because this is basically a yeast. It will take you more time to develop your dough, and also it could come out a little bit weak. So the yeast here helps strengthen the dough. So we're going to cut that, and then we're going to add it directly to our water. And what we want to do is dissolve or melt the yeast into the water. And what's going to happen is the water itself is going to become this milky color. You see how it's starting to turn. Look at that. Starting to turn milky color. We want to keep on mixing that together until we get most of this yeast incorporated into the water and it's all dissolved. That's kind of the goal here, is to get as much of it dissolved as possible into the water. The good news is that once that's pretty mostly dissolved, we're going to go ahead and pour all of this water in. So, and if we leave a little bit behind, not a big deal. So the next thing is we got to fill up 2/3 of a cup for our recipe, but we're going to save that for later. Filling it up at the fridge because we want cold water. All right, so we got about 2/3. We are going to add this flour in the pea bag. When you're mixing by hand, this is what you could do with a spoon. You can break up your old dough with the water, as well as incorporate a little bit of new flour into the dough. That's going to help build a new type of pool. But we're gonna make life a little bit faster for us, and we're gonna use the mixer. So now we're gonna mix and incorporate all of this together. And the goal of this is we wanna break up our old dough and incorporate it with the water and the flour that's here to make kind of a new dough. You can speed this up however you want, so if you wanna get it kind of turning through there more to make that come together. But if you notice, you see how the dough is like breaking apart in here, and that's what you want. That's how you're going to incorporate everything together. Now we're going to mix this for a little bit. You may have to use a spoon, especially with a mixer like this. Just so you know, you're going to be using a spoon or a spatula to probably mix things together a little bit more, just because sometimes you can't get everything incorporated that well in there. So you kind of have to move it around a little bit using a spoon, which is fine, but this is kind of part of the process of having this type of mixer. There's obviously better ones out there, but it doesn't mean that you can't accomplish your goal. Now let's mix this a little bit further, kind of incorporate the rest of that flour and water, and you see how it's kind of almost making a pancake batter. And remember, you can kind of do this a little bit faster if you need to. So now that we have most of this incorporated, you're going to go ahead and add in the remaining flour. And we're going to pour all of this in. And also, we're going to pour half of the 2/3 cup of water. So that's a little bit more than half, but that's okay. We're going to start mixing it again. All right, so now, as you can see, everything is starting to combine well. And so that's where we can start adding in the rest of our water first, okay? And you see how it's cleaning up the bowl for me, making everything nice and together. So now what we can do is drizzle in the olive oil, and that's gonna help smooth things out. And we wanna do this very much at a little bit at a time. And the reason why is if we put all of this in there at the same time, it's gonna start to break up the gluten. Olive oil is notorious for breaking up gluten when you add it in incorrectly. You wanna make sure that you do this process nice and slow to incorporate into your dough. Now that's it. Now at this point, the dough is already together, and let's check the temperature of the dough. We're gonna talk about mixing to 23 degrees Celsius. So I have a thermogun here. You just need to set it to Celsius versus Fahrenheit. This one, you just press 2 buttons. You can go between Celsius and Fahrenheit. The dough itself is already at 22 degrees. So when I scanned it, it's already close to the 23 degrees. And the good news is everything's already incorporated. I could mix this a little bit longer, but the goal is I only wanna get it to 23 degrees and then stop. I can mix it until 23 degrees. If you see right there, you see how it's starting to peak at 23 degrees. So I know the dough itself, it's already at the temperature where the yeast is going to activate and start working. So now we can stop this and we can take everything out of our mixer. We'll take the dough hook off. So now we can take all of this out. And let's make sure that our counter is clean. We don't want any extra stuff going into our dough. If you notice, you see how it's now a nice big dough ball that's easy to work with. And what we need to do at this point is we're gonna let the dough relax. So you can do the slap and fold technique to shape it into a ball. But if you notice, you see, when I'm talking about is it clean, it means can I take my finger like this, pull it away, and not pull dough. But it doesn't mean that my hands are completely clean. Sometimes a little bit of dough is gonna get on your hands, and that's okay. It's not always a completely clean process in dough making. But I wanna make this into a ball. So you see now it's a ball that's nice and formed. You see how it's already really smooth? It's already got some nice smoothness and everything there. Ways you can tighten that up to make it even more glutinous, because what you're trying to do with stretching is develop gluten, is you can take it underneath with your hands and flip and fold. So same thing, you're gonna tuck it back. And that's why it's great to have a countertop to do this with, because the friction of the countertop is gonna help you out. So now, this is all set here. I don't want this to dry out, so what do I need to do? Cover it up. And now, we're gonna rest this. Now, the good part about this is that time is arbitrary. You could rest this for an hour, you rest this for 30 minutes before you ball everything up. Realistically, you wanna just rest it and make sure that it relaxes. The biggest thing is the dough being relaxed before you move on to the next step. If the dough is not relaxed, when you go to ball, it's gonna be hard and it's not going to do the things that you wanna do. So we're gonna go and do some stuff. We actually gotta go mail out stuff to people today. Me and the kids are gonna go and actually do that. We're gonna leave this on the counter, so we'll see you guys later. So now we're back. It's been a few hours. I think I left this at like 12. It's now 4 o'clock. Several hours. Now I want you to watch. If we go backwards in the video, you're gonna see that this was a much smaller dough ball beforehand. So now what we're gonna do is we're actually going to go and get this and we're gonna turn it into dough balls. So we got our handy dough box. All we need is a dough knife to cut everything up. If you don't have a kitchen scale at home, that's okay. You can just simply divide it, eyeballing it and dividing it in half and dividing it into separate pieces, but this can easily make 6. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna divide it here. We're gonna go and divide it up. So I wanna divide it in half. Now, if you notice, you see how it's not sticky to the touch, but if I leave my hand on there long enough, it's gonna stick to it. So you just have to be a little bit quick with what you do. Now, what I'm doing when I do this is I'm squeezing out as much of the gas that's already inside the ball. One, because you don't want a huge pocket of gas in the middle here, and then what it'll do is it'll create a soft spot. Ready? There you go. You see all these dough balls here, right? See how they're all evened out, spaced apart, and they're not very big. This takes time. If you want the dough ball to develop in a size like you would see where they're touching, then you have to give it time. Best thing to do, ball it up, put it in a box, cover it. Now we're gonna let this rest. We're gonna come back later. So right now, it's 4 o'clock. We'll come back later tonight and we'll see how it is.
All right, we're back, and the dough is ready to go. I made an awesome buffalo chicken pizza on a thin crust. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.